Vishokaha Abhayam Richasi Mamatmanam Swayam Jyoti Sarvabhuta Gahashayam Atmanyevatmana Viksha Vishoko Bhayam Richasi Mamatmanam Swayam Jyoti Sarvabhuta Gahashayam Atmanyevatmana Viksha Vishoko Bhayam Vichasi Mamatmanam Swayam Jyoti Sarvabhuta Guhashayam Atmanyevatmana Viksha Vishoko Bhayam Vichasi Mamatmanam Swayam Jyoti Sarvabhuta Guhashayam Atmanyevatmana Viksha Vishoko Bhayam Vichasi Mamatmanam Swayam Jyoti Sarvabhuta Gahashayam Atmanyevatmana Viksha Vishoko Bhayam Vichasi Mamatmanam Swayam Jyoti Sarvabhuta Gahashayam Atmanyevatmana Viksha Vishoko Bhayam Vichasi. Try to get the up and down correct if you can. Some are not listening or don't know quite, but try to follow if you can. Ladies. Mamatmanam Swayam Jyoti Sarvabhuta Gahashayam Atmana Viksha Atmanyevatmana Viksha Vishoko Bhayam Vichasi Mamatmanam Swayam Jyoti Sarvabhuta Guhashayam Atmanyevatmana Viksha Vishoko Bhayam Vichasi Mam, me, Atmanam, the Supreme Soul, or Paramatma, Swayam Jyotihi, the Self-Effulgent, Sarvabhuta, of all beings, Guha, in the hearts, Ashayam, dwelling, Atmani, in your own heart, Eva, indeed, Atmana, through your intellect, Viksha, always seeing, always thinking, Vishokaha, free from lamentation, Abhayam, fearlessness, Richasi, you will achieve. Translation in purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In your own heart, through your intellect, you will always see me, the supreme self-effulgent soul, dwelling within the hearts of all living entities. Thus you will achieve the state of eternal life, free from all lamentation and fear. So, Krishna is speaking to Gardama Muni, and Prabhupada writes in the purport, people are very anxious to understand the absolute truth in various ways, especially by experiencing the Brahma Jyoti, or Brahmana effulgence, by meditation and by mental speculation. Of course, the majority of people may not be exactly conscious of this. And indirectly, you could say they're trying to understand the absolute truth through speculation and experimentation. Not so much through meditation. We're talking in general here. Scientific experimentation, philosophical speculation are quite common. To some degree, most human beings indulge, at least in mental speculation about truth and so on, of various kinds. And science experimentation, also speculation, is systematically accepted as probably the most prominent method of trying to understand the truth. In general, they dismiss the idea of a personal source or a personality from whom everything has emanated. And we even find that persons who study the Bhagavad Gita, despite verses like Aham, as that verse go, for me everything, both material and spiritual, everything comes from me. 10th chapter, text number maybe 8 or something. Everything comes from Krishna, everything rests on Krishna. Everything rests on Krishna, everything comes from Krishna. He's the source of everything. In Brahma Samhita we find, he said, Nadia Govind Sarva Karana Karanam, and so many statements are there in scriptures, and of course in the Bible he's the creator, and so on, and the Quran, everywhere you find reference to the source is God. But in general, materialistic science does not make that as one of their premises. They try to understand another source, some material cause, some chance happening, some whatever. I don't know how they describe the black holes or the big cause of the Big Bang and all these various theories that they come forward with, but more or less dismissing the concept that there's a personality, all-powerful, all-knowing, source of everything, which is actually the cause of all causes. And he who has no cause. This is a very difficult concept to accept. Everything within our view has a cause. And in a sense we also have a cause. But the Absolute has no cause. It is the cause of all causes and has existed eternally beyond and above the manifestations of the universes, and so on and so forth. And they do sometimes indicate antimatter beyond this, let's say, phenomena which is somewhat perceivable. There is another existence. It's not material, it's anti-material, from which somehow or another material is manifested. But there's some definite truth in that. And that's indicated here in this purport, where Srila Prabhupada describes that most persons are eager to experience the Brahman, or the spiritual effulgence. Why? Well, one reason is because we don't need scriptural directives like Dukkhalayam and Shashvatam to ascertain that this material world is a place of suffering. It's definitely one of the ingredients of this world, and a very prominent one, that everyone is suffering, no matter who we are, whether we're heaven or hell, everybody has to undergo some kind of suffering. And that is obviously one of the major endeavors of human beings, all species, but in human life they try to not just try to avoid it, but they try to find ways to remove it. Animals, other species, they can't really remove it. Their whole life is defense to try to avoid it, but they can't stop it or even think about stopping it. But human beings, they make all kinds of endeavors to try to stop suffering. Of course, we can see easily that there's not been very much success in this regards. Maybe one thing is eradicated and another thing comes up. But the endeavor is there. We don't want to suffer. So the idea of Brahman merging into the spiritual effulgence is certainly akin or related to this natural aspiration of the soul not to suffer from various sources, not to have to experience the end of your life, so to speak. So Brahmana existence is certainly devoid of the effects of the modes of nature. There is no karma there. There is no mundane suffering. There is no conscious suffering either. Although there's an unconscious suffering in the sense of being devoid of loving relationship with Krishna. But in of itself, it's just simply an existence. Brahmananda, there is a certain kind of ecstasy there, or it's more a question of intensive relief from the experience of being conditioned in the material world. But it's not the full, it's not the complete constitution. But naturally, it's the first stage in God realization in one sense. Not exactly, there may be piety and so on, but in terms of actual realization of the absolute truth is the first stage, Brahman. So it's not unexpected that majority of those who really are serious, most people aren't, but those who are serious about self-realization, that this Brahman, or merging into the Brahma-yogi, becoming one with God, or whatever it is more, as we've left the spiritual realm because of our aversion to the Lord, our unwillingness to have to put him in the center and serve him with our full existence. As we're averse to that, then this natural, the first stage of spirituality would be a situation where there is no service to God per se. It's a neutral stage in the sense that there's no service to anyone. There's no duality, there's no individuality, consciously speaking. There's no relationship, there's no objectives. It's just existence. So it's not surprising that that's the first stage, and why the Vedas emphasize more over and above pretty much other paths. Most of the indications are towards the impersonal Brahman, becoming self-realized, but only on that level. And everything is one. There's quite a lot of indication, although conclusively speaking, that's not the conclusion, but the indications are there. In most of the subject matter, it's more of an impersonal. As most religions, they emphasize pretty much more the impersonal aspect in various ways. We'll continue the purport, but Kapila Dev uses the word Mam to emphasize that the personality of Godhead is the ultimate feature of the absolute truth. In Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead always says Mam, unto me, but the rascals misinterpret the clear meaning. Mam is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because Krishna is speaking, he's saying me. He's not saying you or something else. He's directly saying again and again, me. if one can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he appears in different incarnations and understand that he has not assumed a material body, but is present in his own eternal spiritual form, then one can understand the nature of the personality of Godhead. And it's probably not quoted here, but we know one very important verse in Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada sometimes would say that this verse is an essential verse of the Gita. Janma karma chamedivyam evan yoviti tattvadahachutvadiham punama janma naiti mameti surjuna. The one who understands this transcendental nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not again, he's in control of everything, does not again take birth in this material world, but attains to the spiritual realm. Just through this understanding, Jobi Samavyayat Mahabhutamishvara, that Krishna does not assume a material form. Krishna appears in his original transcendental form, beyond and above the three modes of nature. Persons within the three modes may say, relatively speaking, they try to see him as material. Maybe a powerful materialist, mystical materialist or something, but nonetheless is material, like anyone else. They don't have any vision or understanding of Krishna. They don't have the means to understand him, because they're looking through material vision. Krishna cannot be understood. Daksha Krishna Namadi, the Bhavad Gwaimendresva. The Supreme Lord cannot be understood with blunt material senses. It's only when the senses become purified by the process of hearing and chanting particularly, that as one's senses become purified, Krishna reveals himself. He's not seen, Naham Prakasha Sarvasha, he's not seen by the materialistic persons, nor by those who have this intention to merge into the Brahman. They may experience the spiritual energy of the Lord in whatever way it is, but they do not have this opportunity to actually understand the Supreme Lord. They may understand to a small degree, as Prabhupada now begins to explain. Since the intelligent cannot understand this point, that's referring to the materially intelligent, the big brains of this universe, whoever they are, even up to Lord Brahma, he cannot fully understand Krishna. He admits that himself in his own prayers in the Bhagavatam. He misunderstood Krishna in the past of the Brahma Vimohana Leela, for instance. Krishna is not easy to understand. The Absolute cannot be understood with material senses, and it's only if the Absolute reveals himself is it possible for the jiva to grasp, and that is only up to a certain extent. No one can fully understand Krishna. Even Krishna himself is ever expanding his own knowledge of his own self. There's this transcendental competition going on between Krishna and his actual character, qualities, pastimes, etc., and his own knowledge or cognizance of them is ever increasing. So who can understand fully? We can understand the principles of the tattva, of the Supreme Absolute, but one cannot possibly grasp within our petty brains or our own limited ability the extent of Krishna and his qualities. It's not possible. One would have to have the same capacity as Krishna in order to do that. And that's Mayavad again. They want to become one with God like that. Simply by seeing the form of the Lord as he presents himself by his own internal potency, as Krishna or Ram or Kapila, one can directly see the Brahmajyoti, because the Brahmajyoti is no more than the effulgence of his bodily luster. And then Prabhupada gives this famous example to illustrate this. Since the sunshine is the luster of the sun planet, by seeing the sun one automatically sees the sunshine. But by seeing the sunshine, Prabhupada doesn't mention it here. But just seeing the sunshine doesn't mean we see the sun. We're seeing the energy of the sun. And just by seeing the sun doesn't mean we're seeing the personality of the sun god either. We're seeing his form, you could say, in the sense of the sun globe, although we can hardly see it because of the effulgence. We become blinded. But we can see the sunlight. And then we often say, oh, the sun is shining in my room, but it's the light of the sun. So the Brahmajyoti is the energy of the Supreme Brahmanohi Patishtaham. It's coming from Krishna, resting on Krishna. Prabhupada goes on to say, similarly by seeing the Supreme Lord, one simultaneously sees and experiences the Paramatma feature as well as the impersonal Brahman feature of the Lord. So these three features are there. Vedanti tattvavitas tattvijnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdite. The Supreme Absolute is known in three features. Those who actually learn it understand the Absolute Truth, not in one, not just Brahman, and not just Bhagavan, although if one understands Bhagavan, one automatically understands the other features. But all three features, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, are understood by those who are actually learned. So here in the same point is being mentioned. The Bhagavatam has already enunciated that the Absolute Truth is present in three features, which we just mentioned. In the beginning as the impersonal Brahman, in the next stage as the Paramatma in everyone's heart, and at last as the ultimate realization of the Absolute Truth, Bhagavan, just like the sun. As we just heard this example with the sun rays, first understanding of the sun, then the sun globe, and then the personality beyond it, the actual proprietor of the sun god, person within inside the body. So we can say the same thing about a human being. We hear about his character, maybe some of his qualities and so on, and his energies. We may see the manifestation of a person's energies in whatever little they create. And then we see their form, which is obviously much more descriptive in terms of who they are. Maybe it describes what they're doing also. But we still haven't really, understood or come into contact with the actual person within, the soul, the conscious living being. Sometimes Prabhupada would give an example, sometimes a very simple graphic example of a village in India, somewhere in times gone by, of course, before the British built the railway system, or as they were building it. In India, there was a village where there was no railway line. So they got news that the British were building a railway line to their village. They didn't know what it was. Would there be a train coming and things? So they had no idea what all this was about. So eventually they built the line, and then they said there's going to be a train coming soon, but they didn't know what that meant or anything, what it looked like, nothing. So eventually the train came along the line from some other junction or something. And from a great distance, they could see the train had a big light on the front. So many of the villagers thought that that's it, that's the train, it's a big light, finished. And then after a while, the train got closer, and then they could see the train had some kind of form. It wasn't fully understood still, they just thought the train is simply a form. So then that was their satisfaction or whatever, conclusion. And then the train got right to the village, and lo and behold, not only was it a light on the front, not only were there many carriages with so many windows and wheels and this and that, but there were people, hundreds of people were coming out of the train. And people were, oh, it's not just a light or just a form, it's a carrier also. There's living entities, countless living entities in the train. So no material example is perfect, but it gives the idea that we tend to drop off wherever we are. and not venture or understand anything beyond it, because there's a science of understanding. Not just that one has to be patient to wait to see, but that is one aspect of it for sure. But there's a process. There's a process of understanding the nature of the absolute truth, which Krishna briefs in the Bhagavad Gita, expands more upon it in Bhagavatam, and gives a living example within Chaitanya Charitamrita of the process of understanding the absolute truth in full. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, one who knows me, without doubt as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is understood to be the knower of everything. Because Krishna is Vedanta Krit Vedavid Eva Chaham. Vedaischa Saviraham Eva Vedyo Vedanta Krit Vedavid Eva Chaham. He's the source. He's to be, all the Vedas come from him, but the Vedas are for knowing him. So one who knows him is to understood to be the knower of everything, because Krishna is everything. It's not everything it's not that just everything rests upon him. He is in reality everything. Nothing exists outside of Krishna in reality. It appears to, but it doesn't. It's all his energy. Everything is Krishna's energy. Everything that exists is Krishna's energy. So there's simple understandings like that, but they're part of the understanding of the absolute truth, part of the process of realization. And we finished the purport. Where are we? The Bhagavatam has already enunciated the absolute truth in three features: the impersonal Brahman, the next stage Paramatma in everyone's heart, and at last is the ultimate realization of the absolute truth, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who sees the Supreme Person can automatically realize the other features, namely Paramatma and Brahman, features of the Lord. We've heard already from Prabhupada about the sun personality. We would sometimes probably give another example. If you've got $1 million, you've automatically got 1,000, you've automatically got 100. You don't need a separate endeavor, they're inclusive. So with realization of Bhagavan, naturally his quality, it includes his qualities, it includes his activities, it includes his energies, etc. One automatically has that. But just to understand the energies is not complete. One has to understand the personality also. They're related, but not complete. The words used here are Vishokabayam Vichasi. Seeing, simply by seeing the personality of Godhead, one realizes everything, and the result is that one becomes situated on the platform where there is no lamentation, no fear. In fact, even on the Brahman we hear Brahma Bhuta Prasanatmana Sochiti Nakangshiti. Even on the Brahman platform, when it comes to the spiritual platform of Brahman, no longer hankers or laments. So what to speak of one who has realized his position in relationship with Krishna. There's no longer any fear. The Brahmajyoti, although the living entity is not experiencing anything necessarily fearful or miserable of any kind, is not complete. The full nature of the soul is not being manifested. So it's not a state which is like, although the state of Brahman is permanent, is not a condition, a constitutional platform for the soul to exist in. So it's like sometimes Prabhupada say, going out into space, you can go into the universal space, the spaceship or something, but that's not our proper or our constitutional position in this material body, at least. We have to come back again eventually. So those who go to the Brahmajyoti, or enter into the Brahman, is generally understood, Yenye Vindakshanarta Manina, that they will come back again into the material world you can't say time, there's no time measurement there. But at some point, the soul will have to re-enter into the material atmosphere, because there is no inclination for devotion in the Brahman. There is no recognition of a supreme being. Everything is one. So the living entity's desire for relationship There's no playing there. There's no there's no bhakti there. There's no one to reciprocate with. So the living entity again enters into the material environment to persevere with a natural constitutional desire for rasa or relationship. So this is not enough just to realize Brahman. One has to realize one's actual constitution completely. Satchidananda. But then, of course, when one comes to referring in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is not referring to the impersonalist so much here. He's referring to the aspiring devotee. One is on the path of bhakti. One will come to the platform of Brahman, but that's not the end of it. That's just a consequence of self-realization, of devotional services, the automatic consequence contained within the path of devotional realization which takes place, that I'm not this body, I'm spirit, soul. And then when that realization becomes more prominent, then real devotional service begins, because it's not based upon any material condition anymore. It's not based upon duality or how I feel or whatever. What's attractive to me is based on a spiritual platform with no effect of the modes of nature. So this is the nature of devotional service, that one gains gets realization of Brahman as paramount. Although that's not the goal, those realizations are also automatically there. Automatically realizes. Just like Prabhupada gives the example, when the sun rises in the morning, one automatically sees everything else too. So one who has this Krishna Surya Samaya Andhakar, this understanding that Krishna, he's like the sun. And wherever there's Krishna, there cannot be darkness. So everything is illuminated, everything is revealed, just as like the sun, when the sun rises in the morning. Everything is revealed. So one who is in the sun of devotional service to Krishna also realizes the nature of the material universe, the nature of Brahman, Paramatma, everything, although not being attracted necessarily to them, being attracted to the personal form of Godhead. Nonetheless, one realizes, if you fully understand a person, you know all about their inner life, you know about their work, their nature, everything. It comes automatically. So, similarly, in relationship with Krishna, when one understands Krishna as he is, one is understood to be the knower of everything. As the result, one realizes everything, and the result is that one becomes situated on the platform. No lamentation, no fear. This can be attained simply by devotional service to the personality of Godhead. And in the last chapter of the Gita, Krishna says, Bhaktyamama Vijanati Yavanyastasmita. It's only by, and in the 11th chapter also, Bhaktyamanya, however it goes, only by devotional service can I be understood as I am, not by any other means. It's the only process. This is the process. Because devotional service attracts Krishna. It pleases Krishna. So when it pleases Krishna, then Krishna reveals himself accordingly as we surrender. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Any questions or comments or differences of opinion or whatever? I'm not in a fighting mood right now, but still, you never know. Anyone?
Yes.
Any question, young man? Oh, over here. Where's that coming from? The far distance of the room there. Way out there in the Brahman. Some question is this really my constitution? Isn't there not more to life than just existence? Just simply existing in the ocean or in the desert, it's not very exciting. Even that's more exciting than the Brahman in one sense. Yes, there are sharks in the ocean, there are cactuses in the desert. You can have a relationship with a shark. Okay, come. Come. Thank God it's over, is that what you said? Yes.
It seemed to appear in the translation, Srila Prabhupada seems to stress on the Paramatma feature. If I may quote, in
Yeah.
your own heart,
Yeah.
through your intellect,
Yeah.
you will always see me,
Yeah.
the supreme self-affirming
Yeah.
soul, dwelling within the hearts of all the living
Yeah.
entities.
Yeah.
At the tail end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada seems to stress on the ultimate Bhagavan feature, if I may quote, simply by seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
Yeah.
one realizes everything.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why?
Well, Kardama Muni is not considered to be a pure devotee of that kind. He's more like a yogi, and Paramatma is the objective goal of most yoga, to realize the super soul in the heart. The stage of worshipping Krishna, personal relationship, is a higher, because a more complete stage. That wasn't what, you can read all the verses and study it more, but my memory serves me right. This is the situation of Kardama Muni, and most yogis are like that. We even see in the second canto of the Bhagavatam, first stages in devotional service, emphasis is even given there, and in the Vedas everywhere, to universal form, understanding the cosmic form of the Absolute, and then the impersonal form. Different stages are there, and step by step by step. So in the path of yoga, it's step by step, but by the one stop, surrender. Prabhupada says it's like going to the top of a building in a lift. All quickly you reach the top. You don't have to go stay floor by floor, but if you walk, you have to go floor by floor by floor by floor. So this is one level. So he's emphasizing this. He's talking to Kardama Muni. He's not talking to Uddhava or whoever. But he's a pure devotee who understands him in full. He's talking to Kardama Muni, that he'll see the object of his meditation, the super soul in his heart, and understand that is at that stage, that's his goal. That's his goal. So Krishna's reciprocating. He's reciprocating for those who are, mundaners, etc. He gives them the material understanding. He reveals that as the absolute truth, science and stuff. For those who are impersonalists, the Brahman is the absolute truth. You will see the spiritual effulgence. And he's not going to talk about anything beyond that necessarily, because they're not ready for it. They don't want it. So he's going to give whatever. It certainly is the truth. There's nothing wrong in that. But he's not indicating. But Prabhupada, of course, those who are actually in knowledge of the absolute truth in full. And it's one of the reasons why Srimad Bhagavatam is spoken, because Srila Vyasadeva himself had put more emphasis upon even Karmakandya, practically speaking, what to speak of impersonal Brahman or localized Paramatma. And certainly what to speak of pure loving devotional service to Krishna, which was not emphasized sufficiently. Bhagavatam is meant to bring us to that point, but also to understand the categories. So we see here different personality, Kardama Muni, and sometimes we hear about other great sages, Kashyapa and others, who may have some kind of mixture there, or not completely understanding these things. Not that we do either, we're just hearing from. If Prabhupada hadn't said anything in the purport, we would have probably come to the conclusion that the localized Paramatma, that's it. There's nothing beyond. And those who read the 11th canto, 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita without proper explanation, most of the people, I don't know now if they even get there, but in my generation, most of the persons who read Bhagavad Gita concluded that the absolute truth was the universe, the Virat Rupa. They didn't see beyond that. They didn't catch the personal aspect of Godhead at all. The personal relationship was just a reverential kind of wow, the universal form. You just like revel in the marvel of the cosmic manifestation or something as the absolute without proper guidance. And even in the realm of relationship with Krishna, there are different sampradayas which emphasize different aspects of relationship with Krishna over and above others. It's not that they're contrary to each other or competitive to each other, so they're revealing according to the reciprocation of the followers at that particular time, practitioners, the heart of the souls of Krishna's. And Prabhupada, of course, doesn't want us to leave off there that the conclusion is the super soul. Not even that the conclusion is Vaikuntha or Ishvarya Bhav, which may, the realized yogi may come to that platform of recognizing Krishna in the form, Vaikuntha form, maybe. Or they may merge, or they may, whatever, they may just accept that situation of the Lord. But to go further, Srila Prabhupada is taking us further here by emphasizing beyond and above the all-inclusive nature of the Absolute Truth, not just certain aspects of the nature of the Absolute Truth. And then automatically one will understand the categories as well, if one understands the whole. If you understand the whole body, you understand the arm, the leg, you don't have to make a separate endeavor. But if you're just studying a portion, that will be your conclusion. And then, if you get the right association, one may go further, one's realization. We see in the Vedas sometimes these other aspects of the material aspect, the impersonal aspect, the localized aspect, are given predominance or a lot of emphasis because, generally speaking, conditioned souls are not here because we want to surrender ourselves in loving devotional service. It just takes, usually in most cases, philosophically also, step by step, mostly emphasizes there. So gradually, like a child growing up through education circles, you don't give the full, you may even give some imaginary examples, basically speaking, to help the child to understand preliminary concepts. And as far as the child's concerned, he doesn't know anything beyond that at that stage. The teacher may even say, great, that you've got it. That's it. You've understood it. But then, when the time comes and they introduce more and more and more. But some want to stay at that level. They don't want to go any further. That's the soul's free will. That's the soul's free will. Can't say any more. But the pure devotee doesn't want us to, the devotees of the Lord, don't want us to stop at that level. They want to offer us the highest, most pleasing level of consciousness, that which pleases Krishna the most. It certainly pleases Krishna if one is worshipping him as the super soul, but not as much as if one is engaged in loving reciprocation. The idea of God as the supplier, the controller, the guide, the witness, oh, true, but these are still in relationship with externals. Lord Chaitanya rejected these one by one, and they're externals in a sense. They're not very internal in relationship with the material world or the energies of the Lord and the Brahman and so on. It's not very personal, not so personal. That's my tuppence worth or 6 months worth or whatever it is, 2 cents worth. Hare Krishna. Devotional service, everything is there. Because that's how we understand Krishna in full. Not other methods may be able to lead to realization of the Brahman or the Paramatma, but to understand Krishna in full, only devotional service possible. Because that alone attracts Krishna's attention, that he wants to reveal himself in full. Anything else? Yes,
if we are in Brahmajyoti, then we have to come back because we are
in the Brahmajyoti.
like in
Yeah,
in the Brahmajyoti.
yeah.
They feel like they may feel loneliness, or they want to get devotional services. They want to come back. They will come to the material world. But if we are already in the spiritual world and we are in Vaikuntha, there also we can have a desire that we want to do spiritual devotional services, and then we may want to progress further, just to go further to serve Krishna. So is that like we also need to come back, or that desire is also based on that desire we can do directly?
These things from a material perspective are not really conceivable. It's the various, you could say, tattvas of the absolute truth are not something which can be measured or analyzed like this. When scriptural statements are there, that's one thing. But in terms of we all, because we have this tendency to see it in relationship to ourselves, when I want, or if I feel like, or this or that. There are other factors involved too. The ultimate aspect is that everything is orchestrated by Krishna. Everything is meant for his pleasure. The living entities situated, or the conscious energy and the living entities situated there in Vaikuntha are perfectly situated. It's not that, they're feeling short of the mark or whatever it may be. That is naturally their constitutional situation. And that brings pleasure. It's not that there's some kind of, revolt or revolution amongst the citizens. Hey, we've been cheated, we haven't got the full deal here. And they're all marching through Vaikuntha. We want Galoka! We want Galoka! There's none of that. They're completely properly situated. It's like in your body. If the foot suddenly decides, what the hell am I doing down here? Thorns, people kicking me, corns on my feet, it's cold. I have to do all the work and everyone's carrying all the weight. I'm fed up with this. I'm going to become the ears, yes. No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It's called madness if it happens. So those living entities that's where they are. Of course, anything's possible. And it could go on and on and on. This is not something for, the ignorant fools like me, dullards, But, this is... And then they go into this thing. How can you fall down? I mean, you're talking about coming back to the material. What is that, a fall down? Or is it a stepping stone to go into Goloka? Or you can go on and on and on, It doesn't exactly work. I mean, you can read Brihad Bhagavatamrita, I guess, if you want to get a little bit more insight into this. But it's Krishna's energies are all perfect and complete. What would Lord Narayan do if everybody went on strike or packed their bags and moved along? It doesn't work like that. Same in Goloka or any plane come to that. But nothing is impossible. It's not like it's like bricks, stuck there. Conscious living entities, but generally speaking, that's the situation. It's a little different in the Brahman because that is not our constitution, it's only a partial portion of our constitution. In Vaikuntha, they are worshipping Krishna. It may not be in the same intimacy, but it's nonetheless there. They're not just worshipping God as the super soul, but they're engaged in active service. To worship God as the super soul is a stage which may lead to Vaikuntha. In of itself, it's not necessarily going to lead to the more intimate aspects, but by association it may. If that's the bhav or the emotion or the intention of the devotee, then Krishna will reciprocate. He will do the needful. So you don't need to get too much hung up in trying to understand. Probably gives the example of the man and the apple and the bird and this and that. What caused the bird to fly away? Was it the apple falling down? Or did the apple fall down because the bird flew away? You can go on and on speculating about these things. But we have to understand everything. everything emanates from Krishna. Everything is meant for the pleasure of Krishna, whether it's Vaikuntha, Ayodhya, Nilachal, Goloka, everything. Even the Brahman is to accommodate. It is Krishna's energy, it's divine energy, to accommodate living entities who have that, at that particular stage, they have that, say, aspiration, conclusion, etc. Krishna's reciprocating with his parts and parcels. It exists. The whole spiritual world is Brahman, but they're blinded by the effulgence. They cannot see the variegatedness, the individuality, etc. They're blinded. Just like when we look at the sun, we become blinded. We can't see anything. It's just this blinding effulgence. Can't even see anything. Maybe totally blinded, or at least for some time you're blinded. So but that's not you can't measure time in these planes. There is no time as such. It's just a matter of whatever it is. The living entity has the inclination to want to experience any kind of relationship or any kind of variation. There is nothing there in the Brahman because they have no inclination, no even awareness of relationship with God. Then one is placed back in the material energy to try to fulfill that inclination. Same thing with the soul coming into the universe. It's not with thinking, I want to come to Sydney and go surfing on Bondi Beach and go down George Street and have a nice meal in the Indian restaurant, the Chinese restaurant. One is not thinking like that. There's just an inclination of aversion to the very concept of worshipping Krishna in the personal form. Why not me? Self-centeredness. The material world is based on self-centeredness. It's not based on expanding one's loving affection to the Lord. Based on self-centeredness. Forgetfulness of Krishna, envy of Krishna. The pure devotees come into this world sometimes for other reasons. Not that Krishna throws you. If somehow or another, someone in the spirit of Vaikuntha goes, again, when it comes to understanding the Absolute, it's not like a geographical maneuver. It's a state of consciousness as well. One who's fully engaged in devotional service according to their relationship with Krishna is experiencing that even in their apparent material condition. It's only apparent. But internally that we cannot see. We cannot see. If for whatever reason, Krishna's will or otherwise, a living entity in the mood of Aishvarya Bhav develops that inclination, whether by association or by constitutional effects, obviously Krishna is going to reciprocate. How he reciprocates is up to him. You don't have to become a necessary and take birth again in the material world. It doesn't have to necessarily be like that. If that's what Krishna wants, if that's what the jiva wants, then nothing's impossible. It doesn't have to be. It may have to take birth. And again, it's this, what is the material world? Is Gokul in the material world? Krishna, when he appears in his various forms in the material world, apparently, but not really. How one may associate like that? One's finding one's attraction towards another form of rasa, whatever. We hear that the living entities who are coming into Krishna's Leela, they do. They associate with those who are eternal associates with the Lord. The Lord is manifesting those pastimes on the material plane for those fortunate souls who have that opportunity. One can enter into that plane, but it's not really the material world as such. It's reflection, you could say, but it's also the reality. In the spiritual realm, just we're getting a glimpse of it. Little window opens. Well, we can enter into that. That's one's inclination. You know, it's a subject beyond me. I'm just repeating a few years and theirs. Okay, well, we're finished there. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go Premanande. Lord Chaitanya is very kindly giving an opportunity for no matter what you want. He's giving us an opportunity to attain to that. We take shelter of the Sankirtan. Movement of Lord Chaitanya, even amongst his followers, some of them were more inclined towards Aishvarya Bhav, some were more inclined towards Ayodhya, mixed Bhav, some different aspects of the absolute truth attracted their natural attention. And Lord Chaitanya tested them, but he didn't impede their flow of devotion. Like trying to put it, sometimes he would test them, but he wouldn't impede it or try to stop it. Encourage, because that brings full pleasure to the whole, to the Lord. Every aspect has to be there, not just one, all aspects. Complete satisfaction. But the most complete satisfaction is obviously the inner loving relationships in Goloka. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hare Krishna.